Welcome back to XRP IQ, the channel where we break down the biggest XRP news, market developments, and future possibilities in a simple and easy to understand way. If you own less than 10,000 XRP, you need to pay very close attention to what we are discussing today. Many investors believe that only people holding massive amounts of XRP can benefit from future price growth. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if the biggest opportunity is not about owning hundreds of thousands of XRP, but simply holding enough before the next major phase of adoption begins? The reason this matters right now is because the crypto market is entering a period where utility, regulation, and real-world use cases are becoming more important than hype. XRP sits at the center of many of these discussions, and recent developments are causing investors to rethink what a relatively small XRP portfolio could mean in the future. For years, XRP supporters have pointed to Ripple's mission of improving global payments. While many cryptocurrencies focus on speculation, XRP has continued to build its reputation around speed, low transaction costs, and efficiency. As more financial institutions explore blockchain technology, investors are asking an important question. If XRP becomes a key part of international payments, how much XRP would someone need to hold in order to benefit from that growth? This question has become even more popular as market analysts continue discussing potential scenarios for future adoption. Many investors who own less than 10,000 XRP often feel discouraged when they compare themselves to large whales holding millions of tokens. However, history has shown that financial markets do not always reward the biggest holders alone. Timing, patience, and conviction often play an equally important role. There have been countless examples where early investors with relatively small positions achieved significant returns simply because they stayed invested while others gave up too soon. This is one reason why discussions about XRP ownership levels have become so important within the community. Right now, the XRP market appears to be entering a period where long-term fundamentals are receiving more attention than short-term price movements. Investors are closely watching regulatory developments, institutional interest, and Ripple's expanding partnerships around the world. While nobody can predict the future with certainty, many believe that the next few years could be critical for XRP's growth story. And if that happens, even investors holding less than 10,000 XRP may find themselves in a very different position than they are today. As we move deeper into this discussion, it is important to understand why so many investors are paying attention to XRP despite the uncertainty that still exists in the broader crypto market. The answer is simple. XRP is no longer being viewed only as a cryptocurrency. Many supporters believe it could become part of a much larger financial infrastructure that connects banks, payment providers, businesses, and even governments. Whether that vision becomes reality remains to be seen, but the fact that these conversations are happening at all is one reason investors continue to watch XRP closely. One of the biggest factors driving attention toward XRP is the growing demand for faster and cheaper international payments. Traditional cross-border transactions can take days to settle and often involve multiple intermediaries. This process creates delays, higher costs, and inefficiencies. Ripple has spent years promoting solutions designed to address these problems. Supporters argue that if more institutions adopt technologies connected to Ripple's ecosystem, demand for XRP could increase over time. This possibility is why many long-term holders continue accumulating XRP even during periods of market uncertainty. Another reason investors are paying attention is the changing regulatory environment. For several years, regulation was viewed as one of the largest obstacles facing XRP. Uncertainty often causes large institutions to stay on the sidelines because they prefer clear rules before making major commitments. Recently, however, many market participants have become more optimistic about the direction of crypto regulation. While challenges still exist, investors believe that increased clarity could open doors for broader adoption across the industry. For XRP holders, this is particularly important because regulatory developments can influence both investor confidence and institutional participation. At the same time, there is a growing belief that digital assets with real-world utility may perform differently from projects that rely primarily on speculation. During previous market cycles, hype often drove prices higher. Today, many investors are asking tougher questions. Which projects solve real problems? Which networks have actual use cases? Which technologies are being tested or adopted by organizations outside the crypto space? XRP frequently appears in these conversations because of its focus on payments and financial transactions. This brings us back to the question of owning less than 10,000 XRP. Some people assume that such an amount is too small to matter, but experienced investors often look at percentages rather than absolute numbers. If an asset experiences substantial growth over time, even modest holdings can produce meaningful results. The key factor is not necessarily how much XRP someone owns compared to a whale. The more important question is whether the asset itself continues gaining utility, adoption, and relevance in the years ahead. Now let's look at the trends that are making many XRP investors pay even closer attention. While no one can guarantee future price movements, there are several factors that supporters believe could influence XRP's long-term outlook. Understanding these factors is important because they help explain why many investors continue holding their XRP despite market volatility and uncertainty. One of the biggest trends is the increasing involvement of institutions in the digital asset space. A few years ago, cryptocurrency was largely driven by retail investors. Today, the landscape is changing. Large financial firms, asset managers, payment companies, and technology organizations are exploring blockchain solutions more seriously than ever before. As institutional participation grows, investors are becoming more interested in projects that offer practical applications rather than purely speculative value. This shift is significant because XRP has always positioned itself around payment efficiency and financial infrastructure. Another trend attracting attention is the tokenization of real-world assets. Across the financial industry, there is growing discussion about bringing traditional assets such as stocks, bonds, real estate, and other financial products onto blockchain networks. Supporters believe that blockchain technology can improve efficiency, transparency, and accessibility. While the tokenization market is still developing, many analysts believe it could become one of the largest opportunities in the digital asset sector over the coming years. XRP supporters often point to Ripple's involvement in discussions surrounding financial innovation as a reason for optimism. At the same time, market psychology continues to play a major role. During every major financial cycle, there are periods when investors lose interest because progress appears slow. Then, when adoption begins accelerating, many people rush back into the market at much higher prices. This pattern has repeated itself across stocks, technology companies, and cryptocurrencies. Some XRP holders believe the current period resembles a stage where long-term developments are occurring quietly, while much of the market remains focused on short-term price action. There is also the issue of supply distribution. Large XRP holders often attract headlines because their wallets contain millions of tokens. However, many experienced investors focus on accumulation rather than comparison. They understand that financial success is not determined by having the largest position. Instead, it often comes from building a position before broader market recognition occurs. Someone holding a few thousand XRP today may feel insignificant compared to a whale, but if adoption expands substantially over time, that perspective could change dramatically. Perhaps the most important factor is patience. Markets rarely move in straight lines. There are periods of excitement, corrections, uncertainty, and recovery. Investors who constantly react to every headline often struggle to maintain a long-term strategy. Those who focus on fundamentals and remain disciplined are usually better positioned to benefit if their investment thesis proves correct. This is one reason why many XRP supporters continue emphasizing long-term holding rather than short-term speculation. Now we arrive at the question that many XRP holders ask themselves. What could happen if XRP experiences the level of adoption that supporters have been talking about for years? While nobody can predict exact prices or timelines, exploring different possibilities can help investors understand why so much attention is focused on XRP's future potential. One of the most common mistakes investors make is looking only at today's market conditions and assuming they will remain the same forever. Financial markets evolve constantly. New technologies emerge, regulations change, businesses adapt, and consumer behavior shifts. Just a decade ago, many people viewed digital assets as a niche concept with limited practical use. Today, governments, financial institutions, and major corporations are actively discussing blockchain technology and digital finance. This transformation shows how quickly an industry can develop when adoption begins accelerating. For XRP holders with less than 10,000 tokens, the key issue is understanding the relationship between adoption and value. If XRP remains at its current level of usage, future growth may be limited. However, if adoption expands significantly through payment networks, financial institutions, and other use cases, the value proposition could look very different. This is why many investors focus less on short-term price movements and more on long-term utility. They believe that real-world demand, if it grows consistently, could become one of the strongest drivers of value. Another important factor is accessibility. Many investors today may find it difficult to accumulate large amounts of XRP due to budget limitations. Not everyone can afford to purchase tens of thousands of tokens. Yet history has shown that successful investing is often about participation rather than perfection. Investors who wait for the perfect amount to invest frequently miss opportunities. Those who consistently build positions over time often benefit from the power of patience and long-term commitment. This idea becomes even more interesting when we consider market cycles. During periods of low excitement, many assets appear undervalued because investor attention is focused elsewhere. Then, when positive developments begin attracting headlines, interest returns rapidly, new participants enter the market, demand increases, and momentum builds. Some XRP supporters believe that if future adoption milestones are achieved, many investors who currently ignore XRP may eventually pay much closer attention. There is also a psychological advantage to holding a long-term perspective. Investors who focus exclusively on daily price changes often experience emotional highs and lows. Every market dip feels like a disaster, and every rally feels like confirmation. Long-term investors, on the other hand, tend to evaluate progress based on broader trends. They ask whether adoption is increasing, whether partnerships are expanding, and whether the overall investment thesis remains intact. This brings us to the most important takeaway. Owning less than 10,000 XRP does not automatically mean missing out on future opportunities. What matters most is understanding the asset, managing expectations, and maintaining a strategy based on research rather than emotion. The future remains uncertain, but many investors believe the next chapter for XRP could be shaped by factors much larger than short-term market noise. As we reach the end of this discussion, it is important to step back and look at the bigger picture. Throughout this video, we have explored why many investors believe XRP remains one of the most closely watched digital assets in the cryptocurrency market. We have discussed institutional interest, the push for faster global payments, the growing focus on blockchain utility, and the possibility that future adoption could create opportunities for long-term holders. But above all, we have focused on one key message. Owning less than 10,000 XRP does not automatically mean you are too late or that your holdings are insignificant. Many investors spend too much time comparing themselves to whales and large institutions. They see wallets holding millions of XRP and assume that their own position can never make a difference. However, successful investing has never been solely about owning the biggest amount. It is about understanding an opportunity before it becomes obvious to everyone else. History has repeatedly shown that investors who remain patient during uncertain periods often place themselves in the strongest position when market conditions eventually improve. At the same time, it is important to stay realistic. XRP's future is not guaranteed. The cryptocurrency market remains highly competitive, and many factors will influence what happens next. Regulatory developments, technological innovation, institutional adoption, global economic conditions, and overall market sentiment will all play major roles. While supporters often focus on the potential upside, smart investors also understand the risks involved. They avoid making decisions based purely on emotion and instead rely on research, discipline, and long-term thinking. One of the most valuable habits any investor can develop is continuous learning. Markets evolve constantly, and new information appears every day. The investors who stay informed are often better prepared to recognize both opportunities and risks. Whether XRP ultimately exceeds expectations or faces unexpected challenges, knowledge will always be one of the most important tools available to any investor. So, if you currently hold less than 10,000 XRP, the question should not be whether your position is large enough. The more important question is whether you have a clear understanding of why you are invested and what role XRP plays in your long-term strategy. Markets reward conviction when it is supported by research and patience. The coming years may reveal opportunities that many people cannot fully see today, which is why so many investors continue watching XRP closely. Before we finish, let us know in the comments how much XRP you believe someone should hold to be prepared for the future. Do you think 1,000 XRP is enough, 5,000 XRP, or is 10,000 XRP the real target? We would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an important XRP update here on XRP IQ. Your support helps us continue bringing you the latest news, analysis, and insights from the world of XRP. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, or legal advice. Cryptocurrency investments involve risk, and prices can rise or fall at any time. Always do your own research and consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions. Never invest money that you cannot afford to lose. Thank you for watching XRP IQ, and we will see you in the next video.